Hi, I'm Andy Maas, and today we're going to talk a little bit about the SS-120 walk-behind sprayer. So a little bit about myself before we get into that is I have helped out at Western for many years, and currently I am actually a Western dealer, and I also use a lot of the products out in the field. So with that all being said, let's just talk a little bit about this sprayer. The SS-120, first of all, is a 12-gallon sprayer. It's battery operated. You just plug it in and charge it. A lot of questions that I get asked are, well, how long will it run on charge? Those are all big variables. Number one, it depends upon how fresh the battery is, how much it gets charged. Sometimes it's how frequently in the cold are you using it, how many miles of sidewalk are you trying to do with it, or are you just trying to do a certain property and then refilling it on the job site and using it as such. So I got started with liquid brine with the little push behind here first. And the reason is because it gives you the ability to not be doing an entire parking lot. You can just start simple by focusing on a section of sidewalk. Maybe it's just one customer you're going to start with. And you can source your brine, and you don't have to have some big fancy machine to make it. And then you fill the machine and you go out and you experiment a little bit with the sidewalk. So where would you want to research, search for brine? Well, some of that is networking for sure. Talk to landscapers or people that you already see spraying brine. See if they're willing to sell you brine. There are companies online that you can do some research for and find them where they will sell you it in big totes. So it's just a matter of getting into the market, talking to people, and then getting out there and using it. When you're first getting started with brine, what I would suggest, don't be afraid, okay? There's probably some key temperatures you want to keep an eye on. 20 degrees would kind of be the one that I'm thinking about, to about 30. Within those temperatures, you're going to have good success with brine. If you start dropping below them, you can deal with freezing issues, but don't let that scare you, because guess what? At the end of the day, put some salt on it and you're going to still be just fine. Before a storm, you want to do a pre-treatment. So you would spray down brine, and the idea with the brine is you're going to melt that first potentially inch or two of snow that falls. So it makes it, number one, a lot easier to move the snow, and number two, will help you with it doesn't stick or bind to the surface. Those are the big reasons why you want to do it. You can, again, spray it after a storm. That's basically just setting up for if we get any thawing. If the snow that's on the side of the sidewalk starts to melt again because it got a little warm from the sun, that treatment that's on the sidewalk will help keep that snow melted, and it just be water and it'll run off. The idea of kind of selling this to a customer is, the way that I do it is, whether I have seasonal contracts or I have just customers that are paying per service, you actually cut down on how many times you have to come back there. And it also really helps making sure that their surface is clean as much as possible. So when you're talking to a customer or a potential customer about using brine, sometimes you can get some pushback as to, this seems like you're trying to sell me another service. The part that I'm always looking at is, you want me to service you the best I can, correct? And that is by using new technology, which is brine. And that does require some additional equipment. It does require some additional sources, like the brine itself. And then, of course, the application of putting it down onto their sidewalk or concrete or blacktop. With using brine, there can be a lot of cost savings as well. So, for example, when you're spraying brine, you're using about a third of the salt that you're using. Now, I know that doesn't really sound like it makes sense, but if you think about what you're trying to do with brine already the salt has been dissolved in the water. And when you spray that down, what actually happens is you end up with the crystals that just kind of lay on top of the surface. So it's already activated, and now it kind of goes dormant, if you will, and just sits there until more water comes to it. And eventually it will get diluted, and yes, you will have to reapply it. But The cost savings in it is that you don't have to constantly just keep putting down more salt to melt off a little bit of material. And you will see the difference, right? We all have had salt where you walk into a restaurant or a bar or wherever you are, and there's just salt all over the floor in this building. That really gets to be less and less when you use brine. One of the other things that you see a lot of as you start to get into brine is you see people that will pre-treat salt as well with brine. And it is a very effective way to do something similar to spraying brine. What you're doing is you're activating the salt with brine to treat the surface. So you're already trying to pre-treat that salt so that it's active. That's similar to what you're doing with brine. Brine is a liquid that you spray straight down onto the surface to help that snow as it falls not stick or melt off altogether. So now we've talked a little bit about all the features and benefits and why we want to use brine. Why don't we get started by assembling this sprayer and show you all the features and benefits that it has.